The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in the cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to RAP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts,
Kim Purvis
and Allison Robinson. Make sure to check us out on our Facebook pages, RAP Paranormal and Friends and RAP Paranormal Busters, for up-to-date show information and events.
Hello and welcome to RAP Paranormal and Friends. I have a special guest for you. I have Carole Obley on. She is the author of Embracing the Ties That Bind, I'm Still With You, and Soul to Soul Connections, and now has a new book out, Wisdom from the Spirit World. Carole has communicated with souls who have crossed into the spirit world through thousands of private and group sessions. She's earned a reputation in her geographical area as a real deal among psychic mediums. She also travels nationally to speak and teaches workshops, as well as maintaining a practice in mediumship based near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So please welcome Carole J. Welcome.
Hi, Allison. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's kind of jump into questions. I would like to know what kind of led you on this path of mediumship.
It found me, as it finds people who are called to do this type of work. Mm-hmm. And like some other mediums in the field, it came through sort of catastrophic event. That event was a fire, and the fire burned me out of what I was doing at the time and burned the business that I had.
Oh, wow.
And so I was picked up from that and put squarely on this path. It took about a year to do that. Mm-hmm. And everything flowed from there. I began taking classes at a metaphysical center. I became very interested in mediumship. I attended Alpha University, that's near Atlanta, Georgia, and took a lot of training at Lilydale, New York, a spiritualist community. And so it's going on just about 30 years.
Oh, wow.
That I'm doing this work. Yeah, it's decades. Mm-hmm. And I'm incredibly grateful to have found my true purpose in life, to help people. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, I never planned on writing any books.
Yes.
That I kept getting a message from people, you need to write a book. I said, I don't want to write a book.
All right.
And then, long story short, now I have my 5th book coming out the end of this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. That keeps you busy.
It's a lot of work to write your own book. You actually sit at the computer and write. Mm-hmm. But I realized that from the feedback over the years, how many people, and at the time writing this book, I had no idea if I was even going to get published, by a publisher.
Right.
That took about a year. Mm-hmm. So it's been a long and varied journey on this pathway.
I would say so. Now, with your mediumship, how do spirits communicate with you during sessions? Like, how do you get the downloads or?
Well, it's through these things called the inner senses. Most of your listeners are clairvoyance, which is, there's also, however, just as important clairaudience, which means listening, and clairsentience, which is feeling or sensing. And to me, and throughout all of my training, and I also train others, really an emphasis on clairsentience, because from there, everything sort of arises, and it's an impression of the spirit communicator. So it's a sense, if you will, is male or female, where they pass from. I do a lot of evidentiary mediumship that's become very popular. A lot of people know what that is. Simply put, it's presenting facts about spirit communication. And also, very importantly and core to mediumship is the recognition of the relationship between the recipient and the spirit communicator. That to me is where the true healing comes in.
Right. Yeah. Now, what type of information do they usually impart with or give you during these sessions?
Well, that's what Wisdom from the Spirit World, my latest book, is about. And there were about 8 or 9. I could combine some of the themes of what the spirit communicators, through multiple. At this point, I've done over 14,000 readings. So there's been themes that have surfaced again and again. And they range from the very basic, which seems sort of mundane, but what it is there is indeed an afterlife. Our consciousness continues. Our consciousness is eternal and indestructible. So that's one of the lessons I wrote about in Wisdom from the Spirit World. And it goes all the way up to, our wounds do not diminish who we are. So in other words, most of us have had some pleasant events in our life. That can be in childhood. It can be, through relationships, through job loss, the death of someone close to us. These are all sort of traumatic events that most human beings have experienced. So I call the term as wounds, but those absolutely, the core of those are what we can evolve from. And they don't diminish us or make us weaker. They're simply an experience that we have had in life. The problem comes in when most people define themselves through those wounds and, sort of cling to those as, I had a really bad childhood, or I had, a terrible divorce, or I lost my dream job, or whatever it is. They're much larger than those wounds. So that's another important lesson. Another one is about our life values. Those go with us when we cross over into the spirit world. The soul does not lose anything. It's all stored in these things called the Akashic files.
Okay. What are those files for somebody who may not?
They're also called records, Akashic records. The famous American psychic Edgar Cayce delved into these. This is where he obtained his information and his trance channeling. I began to read the records. They're energetic imprints of the soul. And for example, you and I sitting here doing this interview is part of our Akashic. Be imprinted upon, if you think of a huge tape recorder, that tape constantly running. That's what the files are about. And every single thought that we have is imprinted upon these files. The first section, I'm still with you. I'm sorry, I write about it, but I'm still with you. That's my second book. But Wisdom from the Spirit World. The whole first section is called "You Signed Up for This." And it means the soul chooses the particular lessons and experiences, parents, geographical location, culture, race, gender. Those are all chosen by the soul prior to being born into the physical plane.
Yes, I've heard that from other guests as well, and I just find that interesting that, because why would somebody want to pick to live, a difficult life? You know what I mean? Like,
I do know what you mean. And that's where the perspective of the soul is radically different than the rational mind. Because on a personality level, on a rational level, no one would ever choose that.
Right.
That would be absolutely insane to choose suffering like that. However, the spiritual value of suffering is to create awakening. And I mean, I'm talking now in terms of consciousness. So that is the value of suffering. It doesn't mean that, it's just, it was great that I went through an abusive childhood. No, I'm not saying that at all. But through that trauma, there arises an opportunity to really awaken spiritually. Also, to engage, another important lesson is the cornerstone of healing, which is forgiveness. And that is simply a desire and a conscious choice to release the past and not carry it.
Right. Now, when you do these sessions, in terms of from the spirit world, in terms of frequency, what is the number one message that they give the most of?
I don't talk about me as if I'm dead. I'm very much alive. And so, that's sort of the overarching theme that usually will come through in every reading. However, how is that established? Anyone can say that. Well, your mom says she's still with you. Your dad is still there. It's through the giving of evidence, of knowledge of that recipient's life, current events, memories they shared with that person who's now in the spirit world. Through the sharing of that, it happens through the phenomena of blending. In other words, that soul in the spirit world blending with my soul. That's how it happens. That's the only way mediumship can happen, is through the blending energetically of those two souls. The sharing of details, I call it little psychic things.
Mm-hmm.
While your mom is saying, you just bought a new dishwasher.
Yeah.
And the person goes, oh gosh, how would you know that?
Right.
But mom knows it because she's still very much connected to her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, would you call, so when you're giving actual evidence, that's like the evidential mediumship, right? Is that something that's learned, like you have to learn that skill, or is that something that it's just kind of inborn with you? Like you've always had it, but maybe it's taken you a little bit to tune into that?
Yeah, excellent question. So I'm of the school that mediums are born, not made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, I am in no way saying that one cannot be trained and hone the skill.
Right.
And by the way, you will never hear me use the word gifted. I believe that is an egoic thing. It puts one on a pedestal. So I never claim that. I say that it's a skill I've done in previous lifetimes. I came in with a predisposition to be highly sensitive. However, just like anything else, like a musician, an athlete,
Right.
A lawyer, you have certain skills that you might be inclined towards,
Right.
but they have to be honed. They have to be refined. So I still have taken online training because I don't feel this is a field where you can say, "Well, I know it all."
Right.
Rest on my laurels. And I've been kind of dismayed in the last decade or so that everybody now, I see so much of everybody saying they're medium. It takes years of training and sitting and developing groups and reading after reading after reading to really get to a level of self-confidence that you can say, even if your recipient is saying, no, I don't know what you're talking about, you can say, I know what I'm feeling and hearing. Just write it down, file that for later.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't take a weekend workshop and be a medium.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You can actually do harm to people because people are coming to you. They're very vulnerable.
Right.
They're in grief. They're hurting. There are many readings where parents who have lost children, particularly the last several years from opioid overdose. That is epidemic in our country.
It is, yeah.
And people are, they're devastated. So you really have to have a sense and do your own shadow work, get your own crap out of the way.
Yeah, right.
To be able to be a conduit to deliver healing to others.
Right. I'm sure there are some out there that give people a lot of false information, false hope, which just in turn doesn't help the situation, honestly. But you're going to find that no matter what kind of craft or something that you do. So,
well, you're absolutely correct. There were bad doctors, there were bad roofers, there were bad janitors.
Yeah.
So it just, but there's a certain integrity that has to come with this particular field. I'm not setting it up in any way as superior to anything else, because every single expression of service or how someone is working in the outer world is just as important and valued in the mind of spirit as anything else.
Right.
But there is an integrity and an ethics that have to be followed in this particular field.
Now, with mediumship, from somebody who knows, what they're doing, how can mediumship help somebody heal?
In two ways, two main ways. Establishing that, I should say, not establishing, reinforcing the bond of love that exists through time and space. The loss of a person or a pet. There's been many readings I've done in which pets have shown up. And sometimes the person on the other end of the phone or on my Zoom, I do a lot of Zoom style readings, will cry, when the pet comes in. And I'll say, Mom is showing me she's got the black dog with her. And the dog had this physical condition going on. And it's very touching to that individual to know that their pet is also divine spirit, eternal spirit. So that reinforcing that connection of the bond of love. Secondly, to help, and I think this is often overlooked, to help people know that they too are an eternal spirit. There's nothing to fear death. This physical life, this existence, is like a grain of sand on a beach in the totality of the soul's consciousness. It's, to me, that really puts things into perspective of what's important in life.
Right.
And to not overvalue things that aren't going to go with us when we do transition to the spirit world.
Right, right. Now, when you're doing these readings, have you ever come across maybe a not really bad spirit, but somebody who was not a very good person or character in their life?
Yes. Yes. However, they're not. It's very important that people understand, because mediumship has been demonized, particularly by religion, and it is nothing to do with. I do not attract, negativity, demon. Why? Through natural law, I don't put that out, so I'm not attracted. Are there people who were abusive that come through, who are alcoholic, who were not good parents?
Right.
Absolutely, and they will say that there will be a perception on my part of their personality. Okay, that's part of the evidence too. I didn't mention that earlier, but the spirit communicator's personality. So, there might be an apology delivered at that point. Because it's really important that people understand things that we do here on the physical plane, they don't evaporate. They go with us, whether that's good or, we're very generous, or we're a kind person, or we're abusive to others, we're negative, we hurt people. That both of those will follow us. So it's really, up to us as far as choice. And we are always responsible for what we produce. And it's kind of a sobering fact when you think about it. Yeah. In that life review, you've probably heard of the life review. That's true. That's true. We get that. Yeah. And so we experience how we made other people feel by how we treated them.
Now, through your mediumships, we kind of talked about how we can pick our parents and things of that nature. Have you ever done like a session on like past life regressions?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I do these things. I'm extremely studied in astrology as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I've taken astrology classes. Oh my gosh, 15 years I've been studying astrology. I've taken formal classes. I've studied online. I've read many, many books. What I do is I do these things called karmic astrology readings. They're based on, like all astrology, the birth date, place, and time. And you can look at the chart if you're schooled in this. You can look at that individual's chart and see with certain planetary placements where the soul left off in the previous incarnation. If people don't believe in reincarnation, I happen to know it's a fact. But I understand there are certain people who don't. You can simply look at, too, what the soul signed up for based on the relationships between the planets and the houses they're in, the signs they're in, their location in the chart. Are they above the horizon, below the horizon? So there's many, many things that can be determined. I've done, lots and lots of karmic astrology readings.
Oh, wow.
They're very insightful because people will say, why is it that I've always had this challenge since I was young?
Right.
Why have I always had problems with money? Why can't I hold on to money? Why have I had problems in relationships? And you can look to the chart. I have people prepare questions prior to the session. And then you can look at the chart and see why that might be, whatever their questions are. There's patterns that are illuminated in the chart. And so karmic astrology, highly, highly insightful, highly fascinating course of study. I've also studied evolutionary astrology.
Oh, wow, okay.
That was first put forth by Jeffrey Wolf Green. The guy's a genius. And it's based on the placement of Pluto in the middle chart and these things called the lunar nodes. So it's a little bit more in-depth astrology, but it's very revealing, especially on a spiritual level.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I had not, I've heard of like the Western astrology, Chinese astrology, that's about it. Like these other ones that you're bringing out, I had no information or no clue about. So those are more in depth than those, would you say?
Yeah, I don't see any value in having knowledge that's not practical in some way. And maybe it's like Capricorn sign. I'm the goat. We got to be practical. We're planners. We're achievers. We're administrator. That's just part of my nature. But I always find if I can pull astrology down and make it very understandable so that people can apply it
Right.
to their life to gain insight.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's like, I forget who said it. The unexamined life is really not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
So, I first began to study it to understand myself.
Right.
And then I thought, you know what, this could really help people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really studied it more so that I could feel very confident when I would give sessions to people.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, when you're not doing sessions, mediumship, or anything like that, do you ever still have spirits come to you? Do you ever get it shut off?
Yes. But it's mainly, I meditate every night before going to sleep. I put headsets on. I use like a HemiSync type program. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, occasionally, I shouldn't say a lot, but occasionally there will be souls who I have no clue who they are, but they're showing me distinctive features about themselves, and it's pre-session. So because the spirit world has no time,
right,
the soul has no time, they just know that I have the ability to perceive them, and there could have been a contact made with an upcoming appointment that I have. This has happened enough times that I could say that, it's definitely a phenomena that's happened. And I mean, very specific information. Sometimes I will sit with a piece of paper and a pen before I do a group, and I will, not knowing anybody that's going to be at that group, and I will sit there and I'll invite a spirit that is, they have a relative that's going to be at that group, and I'll sit and write down facts that they tell me about themselves. And I take the paper with me, and I have a group, and lo and behold, it goes to somebody there.
Oh, wow.
That's happened. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
And it takes an enormous amount of trust on my behalf to be able to do. I could not have done that in my early days. But I'm now at a level where if I tell you something in a reading, I'm pretty doggone sure that it's correct. Sometimes people don't have knowledge of their ancestry.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to look it up.
Right.
I had a grandmother. A lot of people, surprisingly, don't even know their grandparents.
Yeah.
So, when this stuff happens, again, I just shake my head and go, I guess what I'm doing is legitimate.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even go, am I really communicating with this girl? But then when there's something that you want to shout about, like with numbers, I'll give you a real quick example.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I did a larger group, and it was a charity. I donated 100% to, I'm passionate about animals, and it was for our local pet friends. They're an animal charity, and they take care of the rescue animals. And on the way to this benefit, I have a little pad of paper in the car, and I start hearing something. This is highly unusual, but I was on my way there. Guy comes through, gives me his first name, and then gives me this set of numbers. I believe there was 4 numbers. I'm like, I have no clue what this is about, and I'm making this up, right? So I go to the event, and near the end, I pick my paper out, and I read it off. The woman raises her hand. She goes, that's my cousin. He passed in 911. He was a firefighter.
Oh, wow.
The number was the number of his the firefighting unit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, what are the chances of that?
Right. Yeah.
I had no clue. I mean, this was a larger group of people. I didn't know anyone who was going to be there.
Wow.
So it's quite an amazing thing. I have absolutely no fear of death. And by the way, Allison, that would be the third thing that I feel the value of mediumship is, to help alleviate fear of death.
Right.
Because many people are afraid of, they don't remember their real home, which is in the spirit world. And so people begin to fear death. So I also believe mediumship can help alleviate that fear of death.
Right. So before we start to kind of wrap things up, I want to discuss a little bit more about your book, Wisdom from the Spirit World. Now, in this book, you do write a lot about the importance of forgiveness. What does this play in our spiritual awareness?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I consider forgiveness the cornerstone of healing. Why? Well, I think most people misunderstand what forgiveness is. It doesn't mean that you're condoning a hurtful incident or, a hurtful event or abuse or a betrayal. What it really means is I'm making a decision to not carry that in my consciousness because it ends up hurting me. But, I once heard that forgiveness is probably the most selfish act that you will do. It seems kind of sort of paradoxical.
Right.
That, we're forgiving another person. Oh, okay. But it doesn't really mean that. It means that person was acting unconsciously, not with a spiritual consciousness. And we all do that.
Right.
We all get angry. We all let go. I mean, we've all done these things.
Right.
So the decision to not let it define us or, in any way hamper us from our true being of who we are is to realize it was an experience. It's sort of reframing. Again, it's not that people are going to, I think people sometimes they get confused and they go, well, what was done to me, I can't forgive that. Well, that's when you go, Spirit, I don't have the willingness, give me the willingness to be able to reframe this and realize that that's on that individual's karmic slate. Now, if we retaliate, if we lash out back towards that hurtful person or event, then that's our karma. So the value of forgiveness is also to keep your slate clean. And my own spirit guides, I call them my spirit team, told me that a long time ago. Carole, keep your slate clean. And so when I asked them, what does that mean? They told me just what I said to you about not retaliating. Very difficult to do because the ego always wants revenge or defend itself. That's being a human being.
Right.
So the spiritual consciousness of the soul is where we have to come from. And, you can reach that through simple means like mindfulness, going out in nature. These are all healing tools. Sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, saying, I'm going to act as if, I'm acting from that higher self, even if we don't feel that way. So there's, we're in this schoolroom of duality, and there's a lot of pain here. There's a lot of suffering, but there's also the opportunity to transcend it.
Right. What do you hope that readers get from your book, Wisdom from the Spirit World? What do you hope they take away from this?
The knowledge that they are an eternal soul and that they're the captain of their own ship. There are so many people that I witness, I'm going into my later years here. I've been around for a while. And so I've seen so many people who are so willing to give away their personal power. And you own that power.
Right.
If you truly realize that you wake up in the morning, you have the choice to reinvent yourself and your perspective. Nobody else can give you that. Nobody can give you happiness. Nobody can give you peace. That must come from within. These are all topics that I discuss in Wisdom from the Spirit World, as well as excerpts, from my extensive case file of readings. People can use those as examples, hopefully identifying with at least one of those for their own life.
Yeah. Now, where can our listeners find your book? Where can they purchase it?
Well, my website is soulvisions, that's pluralvisions.net, soulvisions.net. You can get autographed copies there. Unfortunately, even as the author, I cannot beat Amazon's prices. And so Amazon.com, Amazon.uk, Kindle, my publisher, Collective Inc. I printed 6 books, like The Sixth Sense, and also Barnes & Noble. So any of those places, and people are welcome to leave a review if they purchase through Amazon. You have to be a verified purchaser. And there are many reviews from my second book. That book, I'm Still With You, I was very tentative when I was writing it because I did not have a publisher at that time. It took me a year.
Wow.
But there's a lot of reviews on there of I'm Still With You as well.
Very good, very good. Now, if somebody were to want to do a session with you, I know you said that you do like Zoom calls or things like that. Is that something that they would need to contact you through your website?
Yes, and again, it's soulvisions.net. I read for people all over the U.S. and out of the country as well. I think there's been about, I don't know, a dozen or more countries that I've connected with people. Zoom can go anywhere.
Right, yes, again.
So that's the cool, and so can Skype, so that's the cool part about that. And the one underlying theme, that unites every single client over the years is the desire to know what lies beyond the physical world.
Right.
And whether that's dealing with their own consciousness, more of a psychic reading. I do a lot of life guidance or psychic readings. I'm extremely studied in the tarot. I've studied the tarot for many, many years. I'm self-taught in that.
Wow,
yeah.
Very cool, very cool.
So, I'm pretty diverse.
I was going to say, yeah.
I've had such a thirst for the metaphysical. I was born with that. I got into UFOs when I was really young. I read books on UFOs. I was like 6 years old reading books on UFOs.
Yeah.
And Bermuda Triangle and ghosts and, all sorts of hauntings, all sorts of things like that.
Very cool.
I've also, done investigations of haunted places. And,
oh, wow. Very cool. You have. Okay. Very cool. Any well-known places that you've been or just?
No, these are mainly local. However, in my vicinity here around Pittsburgh, however, I can tune in to a location. I do over the phone or through Zoom. I do not have to be there physically to feel or sense. It's kind of like a reading.
Right. Yep.
I'm sorry, the spirit world, what I can read. So a place holds vibration. And what a lot of people don't understand too is that land holds vibration.
Oh, yes.
So even if you have a new home that's built on, what I find is a lot of Native American places.
Right.
There's a lot of activity, orbs, all this sort of thing, portals, this sort of thing. The structure doesn't matter. It's the land.
Right, yeah. I hear that too. We have Kim and I, who usually does the show with me, we have a gal that sometimes, if we're kind of picking up on something at a location, we will phone her and just not tell her where we're at, let her, like a video one, just kind of walk her through and see if it's picking up what we're picking up on. It's very cool how somebody can do that over just a video, not actually be in the physical location itself.
Oh yes, this stuff because it's energy, and energy is not confined to a geographical location. So that's how that can be accomplished. People will go, "How can you do a reading through the phone? You're not even seeing the." I prefer it that way because I look at a blank wall in my office, and it's all clairvoyance, or it's just tapestry of those three mirror senses I spoke of earlier.
Very cool, very cool. Well, Carole, it was a pleasure having you on the show. A lot of insight. You have some great books out there, so I really encourage our listeners to go out, check out your books, Barnes & Noble, Collective Ink, Amazon, at your website, soulvisions.net. If you want a reading, you can contact Carole on her website as well. We'll have all this information on our social media for you to get in contact with her as well. And once again, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Peace out, everybody.